What if the reason you can't stay consistent isn't because you're not disciplined, but because you actually have a unique brain type that's different to everybody else's? Because the reality is, that's not just a metaphor, that is likely how your brain actually works. And once you understand that, you'll stop blaming yourself for a problem that you were never going to be able to fix with just more willpower. I used to frequently sit in conversations with people, and we're talking coaches, business owners, and friends, and I could always tell them exactly what it is that they needed to do, step by step with total confidence. Build the funnel this way, price it like this, use this psychological trick in your marketing. I could see it as clear as day for them. And then I'd go home, sit at my desk, and not be able to make myself do any of it in my own businesses. I'd end up spending 14 hours hyper-focused on redesigning a landing page that nobody was ever going to see, or rearranging my Notion dashboard for the 4th time that week, or starting a totally new project because the dopamine that I was getting from that being new was far more interesting to me than going and doing the very important but arguably boring task inside of my business. And at the end of every single one of those days, I would say to myself and my partner, what the fuck is wrong with me? And truth be told, I said that for years. And I genuinely believed that there was something fundamentally wrong with how my brain worked. Because I could see exactly what needed to happen, exactly what it is that I needed to do, but I just couldn't make myself do it. I couldn't seem to get into a state of consistent execution. And if that sounds like your life, then here's what nobody has told you. You don't have a discipline problem. You have a different brain. So there's a concept that I use that's completely changed my life, and it is called the hunter brain. And it comes from an idea that's been floating around for a while. A guy called Tom Hartman wrote about it a few decades ago. But I've taken it and applied it to entrepreneurs because I feel like it explains so much about why some of us operate the way we do. The basic idea is this. For most of human history, the tribe needed two types of people. You had hunters. These are the ones that operated in these intense bursts of focus. They were able to make fast, instinctive decisions. They thrived off of novelty and challenge because they were constantly seeking out prey. They were able to see connections that nobody else was able to see by being able to track and stalk their prey and see where they were going next. They were able to move very quickly when they were engaged. So again, when they saw their prey, they were able to take very fast action. They were very emotionally intense and also very empathetic. They were able to build new things and innovate naturally. Again, like think new weapons that they were able to create to have a better chance at killing the prey. And they were able to adapt very fast when things changed. And then you had the farmers. These are the ones who stayed back. They tended the crops. They maintained the systems. They worked slowly and consistently over long periods of time. They followed the processes that they knew they needed to follow in order to reap the benefits next season. And they were the ones that kept everything running. Now, what's important here is that both of these types of individuals, the hunter brains and the farmer brains, they were both very important. They were essential and both highly valuable to the ecosystem and to the development of the tribe. They were just different brains and they were built for different work, different environments, different contexts. Then the agricultural revolution happened. Then the industrial revolution happened. Then the school system. Then the 9 to 5. Then the modern business world. And all of it, every single system that we now operate in as a society was built for and by farmer brains. Sit still for 8 hours. Follow the curriculum, maintain the spreadsheet, do the same thing day in, day out, be consistent no matter what. And if you've got a farmer brain, then that's fine. You can do that. You have the ability to do that. But if you've got a hunter brain, and there's a good chance if you're watching or listening to this, you do, then those systems will feel like absolute torture for you. And it's not because you're lazy or undisciplined like so many people will tell you or have you believe, but it's because your brain is literally wired for a different type of work. And this is the bit that took me absolutely ages to understand. So let me explain this properly. The hunter brain runs on a very different fuel source to the farmer brain. The farmer brain is importance driven. If something is inherently important, they can make themselves do it. Simple as that. The importance of the task is enough to get them going. Whereas the hunter brain is interest driven. Importance alone doesn't create engagement. Interest does. Novelty does. Challenge does. And so does urgency. This is why you can hyper focus like I did for 14 hours on a landing page, because that work is creative, it's stimulating, it is interesting. But then you can't physically make yourself send 10 direct outreach messages because that task, no matter how important it is to your business, generates zero stimulation for your brain. Your brain literally isn't releasing the chemicals that are required for it to then engage with the task. And I want to be crystal clear, this isn't me making excuses for anyone. This is just genuinely how the dopamine system actually works for hunter brains. You and I, we have a lower baseline dopamine than a farmer brain, which means that you need more stimulation to reach the threshold where your brain says, right, that is it, I am engaged, let's go to work. Now, interesting tasks, they can cross that threshold easily, but boring tasks, no matter how critical they are, Just don't. So when you've spent your entire life trying to force yourself through boring but important tasks using willpower and failing and then calling yourself lazy or undisciplined, you've been blaming yourself for what is in fact just a system error. The system was wrong because the brain was doing exactly what it was designed to do. And I want you to actually sit with that for a second. Every time you've beaten yourself up for not being consistent, for starting something and not finishing it, for knowing what to do and not doing it, that wasn't a character flaw. That was a hunter brain operating inside of a farmer brain system. And I found this out in the most unexpected way. I was out for dinner with my fiance and my mum at a restaurant, and I was doing what I always do. I was telling them about a new business idea that I had. And yeah, it was likely the third that month. And then they both just looked at each other, laughed, and then looked at me and said something along the lines of, obviously you've got something going on. Little did I know, secretly they had been talking for a long period of time about the possibility of me having ADHD. And I was genuinely shocked. I remember sitting there thinking, what? That's fucking news to me. Because in my head, ADHD was one of two things. It was either naughty boys at school who were throwing chairs around and getting in trouble, or it was blue-haired women talking on TikTok saying how they couldn't hold a job down. And I didn't associate with either of those. But then I went down a rabbit hole. And the more I read, and the more I looked back at my entire life through this lens, the more obvious it all became. The boredom at school, the restlessness when I had my first job at 16 and I was reading Harry Potter books on my hidden monitor, closing a profitable business on Christmas Eve because I'd outgrown it and I couldn't stand to be within it for another day longer. The constant, restless drive to create new things all of the time and the inability to maintain existing ones. Every single one of those moments suddenly had an explanation that wasn't something is wrong with me. It was the fact that my brain was built for hunting and I kept trying to farm. Now I want to be really clear about one thing. I am not saying that having a hunter brain is all sunshines and rainbows, because it absolutely isn't. Having this brain comes with real costs. Inconsistency, chaos, starting 10 things and finishing none. The pendulum of emotional intensity that can wipe out a single day. Time blindness. The inability to maintain systems that someone else who has a farmer brain would keep running on autopilot. Those are real and I live with all of them, and likely so do you. But every single one of those has a flip side. Feeling scattered, that means that you're also multi-interested and you can see connections that other people are gonna miss, which is great in business. If you're impulsive, that also means that you're decisive and you want to move fast when it matters. And that, as that saying goes in business, money loves speed. You struggle to do boring tasks. Don't worry, me too. But this means that you're also deeply attuned to what actually energizes you, and alignment, which is a massive strategic advantage if you can actually build around it. And if you are emotionally volatile, you're also highly empathetic and emotionally attuned to people around you. That makes you likely a nice person and someone that is great to work with, which is exactly why so many hunter brains make incredible business owners, coaches, salespeople, and leaders. The truth is that every negative has a positive, and every positive has a negative. They are the same traits that are just expressed in different environments and contexts. And once you understand that, once you genuinely see this is a duality rather than a disorder, everything will change, because you'll stop trying to suppress the traits that at the moment feel like a weakness. And you'll start building a life and a business around the traits that are actually strengths. And I see this every single week with the people that I work with. Someone arrives and they're carrying years of shame and guilt, years of what's wrong with me. They have tried every productivity system, every morning routine, every app, but nothing stuck. And they have concluded that they are the problem. And within the first conversation, usually within the first 10 minutes, that shifts. Because for the first time in their life, someone is telling them that your brain is just wired differently. That's all this is. The systems that you've been using up until this point in your life were just designed for a different brain type. So of course they didn't work. And the relief on people's faces when they finally have that moment where it just clicks for them is something that I'll never get tired of. It is not a free pass. It's not, oh great, I've now got an excuse. And if you think that way, you might as well click off now, because you're not gonna like my content. Because I believe it's the opposite. It's, right, now I know what I'm actually dealing with. I can build something that works. And that's what this whole channel is about. That is what the hunter brain is all about. Because I spent a decade in business trying to operate with a hunter brain inside of farmer brain systems. I spent over 150 grand on coaches, mentors, masterminds, and none of it actually addressed the root problem that I was experiencing, because none of them knew that this brain type existed. So I have built my own system, something that I wish somebody else had actually built. And I now teach it to other hunter brain entrepreneurs who are stuck in the exact same place that I was. So if this is the first piece of content of mine that you've watched and you're sat there thinking, shit, this is me. Good. That means your brain is working the exact way that it should. And let me know in the comments if this is something that you resonate with, because I read and respond to everyone and I fully empathize and feel your pain. So now you know you've got a hunter brain, but I haven't told you the most expensive part yet. I've spent multiple six figures on business coaches, mentors, and consultants trying to fix my problems. And almost all of it was wasted because they were solving the wrong problem. And I cover exactly that so you can avoid the same mistakes in this video here. So go give it a watch and I'll catch you over there.